The story about the South African GSM Darts and Flamingos is well documented and their origins and legacy comprehensively described in numerous articles. Another locally built sports car, celebrating 52 years since the first one was built, which has not received the recognition it deserves, was the Marauder. The Marauder was the brainchild of Peter Meffan. Peter was known for his offset Formula 2 hot rod he raced with great success at Wembley Stadium. The car proved so fast that it was banned from the class. This offset car formed the basis for the Marauder, which is very similar in many aspects to the Lotus 7. I recall many nights at Wembley Stadium watching Peter rake in the victories. Peter's car was so fast, and the innovative offset design facilitated superior oval track handling that Buddy Fuller banned him. The Marauder project, although very small, was a definite South African venture by South Africans with the intent of promoting motorsport in this country and has its place in our history. The main purpose of building the Marauder was to have a cheap racing car built in South Africa. The car was built by Matador Motors, which was owned by Peter Meffan. 136 kit cars had been built when the oil crises in 1973-1974 resulted in the doors being closed. The last car until recently was in the possession of its original owner, Kingsley Dean. Cars were sold throughout South Africa and the surviving cars are distributed throughout South Africa. The Marauders went through several revisions, with the first original cars being all aluminium, Mark I. The Mark II. The Mark III. The Carlos Martin Special, known as the Mark IV. Today, a healthy Marauders Owners Club exists with around 40 examples still on the road. One day in February 1982, I noted a Marauder for sale in the Star Classified ads. I just knew I had to have this car and bought the car for 2,800 Rand. Although in not too bad condition, it was always my intention to strip the car down totally and rebuild it. Work on the stripping and rebuilding commenced in earnest in May 1982. Many interesting anecdotes arose during the rebuild, with my neighbors disrupting my weekend intentions of rebuilding the car by arriving with copious amounts of beer and discussion around the car. Needless to say, progress was slow. I sometimes wondered if it wasn't an excuse for them not to do garden work. The total rebuild cost 5,000 Rand, but to place it in context, at that time, the Escort 1600 Sport was selling for 5,000 Rand and a Golf GTS was 6,800 Rand. The period from June 1982 to January 1985 was spent rebuilding, and the car was roadworthy and registered in January 1985. The roadworthy test was interesting. The testing facility in Witbank was reluctant to pass the car and made me go to the provincial testing ground in Hercules, Pretoria, where the car's structure and build quality was reviewed for safety and legal compliance. Needless to say, the inspectors were happy with the structural specifications and the build. At this stage, the car had the traditional Ford Cortina GT pre-crossflow engine 116E installed with a mild cam and twin single-choke Delorto side drafts, GT bullet box and Cortina differential. To this day, many components in the car still have the 109E markings. The old Cortina was the 109E. It was not long before one realized that more power was required. This resulted in a Kent Crossflow being built up. The approach taken was to include the best from the then most renowned Ford modification specialists. This resulted in many interesting discussions with Richie Jute, Pee Wee Buys, Camtech, Dave Repsold and Johan Kutzi, who then was known as having the fastest escort in the world. The result was a combination of all their inputs and turned out to be really rewarding and delivered the required performance. Nowadays, this is not a patch on the power being delivered by the Toyota, Datsun and Opel engines. In 1990, my younger brother purchased a Marauder fitted with a Pinto engine, and I then rebuilt this one with him. At that time, I had been transferred from the mine I was working on and was left with 2 weeks to complete the build. This meant many early mornings and only 2 to 3 hours sleep a night. I completed and delivered the car on the Sunday, with the furniture removal van arriving the next day. Work commitments on a project resulted in me being based in Vancouver, which resulted in the car being kept in storage from 2007 till 2012. During 2015, track days were attended, and it is always an adrenaline rush and reminded me of the days when I was karting seriously. The car was then parked and stored. The opportunity arose during December 2018 to do some rejuvenation work on the Marauder. The lesson learnt is that cars break whilst they stand. Extensive work was required to get the car back to standard, with a whole program being initiated. On completion, I took the car out for a shakedown run to Milk Boss. It was really great to be back behind the wheel. Problem is that when standing, the car was on its wheels, and these now have flat spots. This really is not a problem, in that the wheels were fitted when the car was rebuilt in 1984, and the code on the tires indicate they were made in week 38 of 1984. Not bad, but now time for a change. Why a Marauder or Lotus 7? Why would people drive cars like this and enjoy them? Full wind blast, wind in the face and ears, noisy, hot in the car. All the things which would put people off, but the passion remains. During 2022 and 2023, work commenced on purchasing, overhauling and installing a Ford T9 5-speed gearbox. The installation of the gearbox required several modifications, such as mountings, frame and prop shaft. In addition, a shim was installed under the cylinder head to reduce the compression ratio to avoid running on avgas or racing fuel. This has been a long process, and due to work commitments is nearing completion in February 2025.